Good afternoon. We're going to get started in a few minutes. Welcome. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Scott Allen Davis, and I am Director of Operations here at SEEL. Welcome to our first SEEL webinar series event. And today we're talking about small business, and is small business the IQ or income qualified of the C&I industry within EWR or energy efficiency? We have a great group of panelists today. I'm so happy to have all 5 of them join us. And so I'm going to start off with introducing you to them and letting them tell you more about what they do. So we're going to start off with Jean Gibson. If you could tell us who you are, Jean, your expertise, the company you represent, and your role and responsibilities there. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. I think I'm Jean Gibson. I'm with Peoples Gas and North Shore Gas, which are brands under the WEC Energy Group label. So Peoples Gas is in the northern area of Chicago, or actually is Chicago, all of the Chicago territory. North Shore Gas runs from just north of Chicago to the Wisconsin border. My role is manager of energy efficiency programs. I focus on our commercial and industrial segment. So those are our largest commercial buildings, our industrial customers, small business customers, mid-sized business customers, as well as our public sector customers. I also focus on our research and development and market transformation initiatives. And we are in the 4th year of our current program with our energy efficiency goals ending in 2021. So my area right now is to really focus on finishing strong this year, achieving our therm goals, as well as our spend goal in the public sector area. And we are in the middle of putting together our next plan for the next 4 years. So I'm very happy to be here with everyone this morning. Thanks for inviting me to the conversation.
Thank you, Jean. I'm going to now pivot to Suzanne Perot. If you can introduce yourself, tell us your connection, that'll be great.
Thank you so much. I'm Suzanne Perot. I'm the Small Business Program Manager at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. So the MEDC is a quasi-state agency responsible for economic development and attraction here in Michigan. So I work on the community development team, and part of our role is to build vibrant places and vibrant communities across the state. So I've been in my role for, I've been with the MEDC for almost 3 years, and I originally started on one of the technical assistance teams supporting our community development work. And one of the things that we saw is there's really a need for more support for Main Street businesses. So I'll talk a little bit about who our target customer is when I say Main Street businesses, but we've been developing both technical assistant tools and incentive programs for that segment of business customers. So looking forward to sharing more with this group, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. And Chad, I'm going to come to you next. Chad Miller, if you could tell us who you are and what company you represent.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for. So I'm a senior program manager with Consumers Energy. I manage all of our small business energy efficiency offerings, including but not limited to our Trade Ally program, our assessment and direct install programs, and our online marketplace. I've been working in energy efficiency for over 10 years, managing the small business programs mentioned for the past 3 years. And then in my past, our residential low-income energy efficiency program is managing our low-income bill payment assistance programs. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today. So
I'm very much so looking forward to your perspective on this conversation. So thanks for being here, Chad. Kyle, I'm Richard. If you could introduce yourself and tell us more about you.
Hi, I'm Kyle Richards. I am an energy advocate with the Small Business Association of Michigan. SBAM is the largest small business organization in the country. We have about 29,000 small business members in every county in Michigan. And our goal is simple. It's the success of small businesses in Michigan and making Michigan a vibrant place to start and run a small business.
Thank you, Kyle. And last but definitely not least, Jeremy Capello, if you could tell us who you are and who we can see who you represent, but who you represent in your role.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Scott, thanks for having me and looking forward to the conversation. My name is Jeremy Capello. I've been with DTE Energy for going on 9 years this year. And I've been in energy optimization, or EO, as we used to call it. And now it's EWR, energy waste reduction. Those are the regulatory terminologies, I guess. I've been supporting our small business programs for 2.5 years as the program lead. Previous to that, I was on the strategy team where I managed our regulatory filings. I was the data guy for IT, which is how Scott and I met feels like forever ago. So I feel like I've had kind of a lot of experience within EWR, and I'm just really looking forward to sharing that with all you guys.
So thank you to all of our panelists. So just so people know what we're here to talk about. So we really want to have the conversation about, should small business have set-asides on the consumer and industrial side of the EWR EO house, just as income qualified does on residential. And there's so many different opinions about it. I have so many strong opinions about it. I'm going to keep a lot of mine to myself. We do have a white paper that will be following this webinar that will come out in the next week or so that will express a lot of that and capsulize some of this discussion. So any question that you have, I do want you to feel free to send those through the chat so we can address those and get to those before we're done at 1. But we're going to start with our first question for the group. And I'm going to start with Chad on this question. And this is a question that I do want to hear from everybody on, is how does your organization define small business?
Yeah, great question, Scott. Our small business criteria has changed over the past years. We originally, it's all based on usage. So we originally started with those customers at 100,000 kWh annually or 6,000 MCF annually. Increased that recently. So our current criteria to be defined as small business is 700,000 kWh annual usage and 10,000 or below MCF use. So that's how in energy waste reduction, that's how we define it.
Okay, so just as a comparison, I'm going to go to the utility partners first. Jean, how do you all define small business?
Similar to Chad, ours has evolved over time. When our program started roughly over 10 years ago, we were serving markets for small business that were 60,000 therms or less annually. That's grown over the years. So now our current program defines small businesses specifically as 150,000 therms per year annually. We do have, our program has changed. It's called now a small and mid-sized business program. We saw an unserved segment up to 400,000 annual therms. So that's now part of the program as well. But we, especially focus on our small businesses within that.
Okay. And Jeremy, what about DTE?
Yeah, kind of similar to Jean and Chad. We've changed over the years. Our experience with the program, I think we learned a lot about our customers and what they were looking for. I think very early on, the guidelines were pretty loose and we just had a small business program. People kind of came to it, right? But as we got more sophisticated with our programs and our design, we kind of tried to put a box around that. Internally, we have a usage threshold of about 550,000 kilowatt hours. Typically, what we say to customers or in communications is people who have a bill of $60,000 a year or less. What we kind of found was more people were responsive to a dollar amount, and they seemed to get really confused with energy. So that's kind of what we came up with, but I'd say those can be relatively loose, right? And we'll talk more later on about some of the other programs, but that's kind of where we have it at for the past 3 years.
Okay, thank you. So Kyle, talk about how SBAM defines small business.
We use the national definition of small business, and that's 500 employees or less. But our niche is typically 100 employees or less.
So you in your introduction, you mentioned that you had, I think you said 29,000. Was that 29,000 members, or there were 29,000 small businesses? Which was it?
29,000 small business members. So each business is its own member. Their
And
employees
so-
and their staff don't count as part of that number.
Understood. Okay. And so out of that 29,000, the majority of them are 100 employees or less?
Yeah, I would say probably 95% of our membership is going to be under that 100 employee mark.
Okay, thank you. And Suzanne, how do you all define small business?
Yeah, so the MEDC in general works with businesses of all sizes. Again, using some of that same national small business administration definition of 500 employees or less. However, I will kind of just narrow in a little bit on some of the work that I'm doing with Main Street businesses. Oftentimes these businesses are referred to as micro enterprise, so meaning 9 employees or less. And I work especially with businesses located in our traditional downtowns and historic neighborhood commercial districts throughout the state. Oftentimes in any industry, but often retail, restaurant or service-based businesses. So that's kind of our definition for some of the programming that we have to support Main Street businesses within community development.
So one of the reasons I wanted to start with that question particularly, and thanks Suzanne, was really to give people an idea of it's really not as defined. It's very fluid in terms of how everybody looks at small business, and it depends on a variety of things. And so I did want to start there. And so I want to now just hear from the utility partners, starting with Jeremy. How many small business customers does your organization serve through your programs in a year on average?
Yeah, so we at DT have a pretty large territory, 2.1 million electric, 1.2 gas. Of those customers, about 300,000, close to around that, would be considered non-residential. Of the 300,000, I'd say probably about 60 to 70% are small business customers. We have what's called our key accounts or our major accounts. Those typically are large customers, right? They have account managers, universities, kind of things like that, which make up a lot of the other properties. But for the most part, I'd say a lot of our customers are small business. And just to touch on something I left out on the previous question, one of the ways that we also look at how to define a small business customer is what rate code they're on. And that's where this data came from, because we have obviously demand rates and different components for more sophisticated customers, but basic general service rate would also let us know that's a small business customer. So yeah, I mean, I'd say right around that, 65 to 75% of our non-residential customers are small business.
Mm-hmm. And Jean, what are your thoughts on the same question?
Similarly, we have a large percentage of our commercial businesses falling into that small business category. So in the People's Territory specifically, again, that's Chicago, we have roughly about 4,300 commercial industrial customers. And again, about 80% of those are our small businesses. So we have a large number of those customers within our territory. So they're a large focus of what our programs look at. Similarly, in North Shore Gas, it's a much smaller territory, but we do find that pattern of about 80% of the commercial businesses in that area fall into the small business category. So we put a lot of time and attention and care towards how we think about approaching this customer base and serving them.
Okay. And Chad?
get the mute button off. Yeah, so similar to what Jeremy mentioned, we have about 200,000 C&I accounts that would be classified as small business. Out of those, when you reduce the noise, meaning if the account is the rate codes, maybe street lighting, maybe there's a meter for street lighting. Once you exclude those, we use a number of about 150,000 potential small that would be potential customers or participants in our small business programs.
Okay, and so out of the three of you, do any of your utilities have a set amount or target for small business that you want to achieve participation on an annual basis? Jeremy, Jean, or Chad?
Yeah, I can kind of start, Scott. So typically what we do through our plan filing process and our regulatory filings is to kind of take a look at what we have in terms of our cost effectiveness, our budget, kind of where all of that's going to land is extremely important, right? Being a surcharge funded program, it's imperative that we use ratepayer dollars appropriately. So what we actually did was did a potential study to better understand how many customers are out there, what type of energy efficiency opportunities are there, who hasn't participated or has. So while we don't have anything specific to a small business number, we do have megawatt hours and therms set aside for small business customers. Last year, that was about 40,000 kilowatt hours and about 70,000 therms. Again, those are specific to the small business program. I think we're going to touch on this a little bit later, but there are small business customers who participate in our various programs, right? Like we have a midstream program where a customer can go right to the midstream distributor and purchase a product. And we wouldn't discourage a small business customer from doing that, right? So we know that people naturally kind of fall into those guidelines. And similar to, as everybody else on the panels mentioned, it can be very difficult to define what is a small business customer, right? So I think for those reasons, we don't typically put a hard number on it, but from a program perspective, we would set our goals from that standpoint.
Okay.
And
Chad or Jean?
I'll add, we want 100% participation, right? So we're always offering, we got lots of different programs, and I think that's where it's important to speak about participation. What does that equal? Participation for me, as mentioned above, prior is that I have an online marketplace. I've got a direct install and assessment team. So participation, those customers that participated might have only received an assessment from us, say. With that does not mean that they've done everything that's potential, available to. So we want to see them participate in all programs. We want them to maximize, as Jeremy mentioned, the customers are paying for this. And so our objective is to make sure that they utilize the programs that are and get their money back of what they invested. And hopefully they can get more than what they invested overall. So, we have about 40% of our customers have participated in one way or another. But again, like I said, that doesn't mean that, out of 150,000 potential customers, we're not, yet. If they just received a free thermostat from us, or, they received an assessment, may have some great opportunities to do a great big retrofit lighting project or something that will really make a difference in their utility bill.
Okay, Jean?
Very similar to the others, we're a natural gas utility, so we very focus on visiting some customers. Customers can use some of our measures every few years, so we like to keep relationships with the customers that we have and go back and find new customers, and then we try and balance that over a 4-year plan. So we have within our portfolio, we are a business program, so that, like I said earlier, is the big customers all the way down to the smallest ones. And with the large number of small businesses that we have in our territory, we are very focused on those, but we don't have a hard number that we fix every year. Although when we get into conversations later and talk about how we've done through COVID and things like that, we do have percentage numbers as to how well we've performed and how things are going. So we do have a measure that we're looking against to make sure that we are, eye on the ball, reaching this audience, engaging with them. How do we adjust when the participation numbers maybe aren't what we want them to be, or when we're having a challenge like we did this past year? How do we make adjustments? So we do have a piece in there that to pay attention to. And again, it's the cost effectiveness that weighs into this and what the customer needs are at the time. So we try and balance it across our portfolio over the period of time. Gives us a little bit of flexibility to do that and make the changes where they're needed.
Thanks. So Kyle and Suzanne, I'm just curious to hear from you around, do you think there should be, a more specific definition around small business and the segment, one, and then two, coming from that and hearing what Chad, Jean, and Jeremy shared, how aware do you know your constituents are of the energy waste reduction or energy optimization programs that the utilities offer? Chad, you're unmuted, so Kyle, you can start. Sorry.
Sorry. I think it varies a lot between industry. When you talk to some small manufacturers and grocery stores and things like that, they tend to already know of programs and have participated potentially. When you get down into some of the smaller office buildings or retail shops, they don't typically have as much of a idea of these programs existing. So as far as the definition of a small business, that's kind of how my role kind of started is, so what I do is I help small business owners find the resources to do these energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. And with the utilities having so many different programs, I can help that small business customer find which program would best work for their situation. So some need complete retrofits of their whole building. Others are very set and have basically done what they can. Others can afford to do things and others can't. So just finding what programs have low or no costs, and then also finding things that'll help them in the very long term. So just helping them find the correct program.
Do you have a target of how many businesses to get to participate in these programs annually?
We have some outreach goals as far as how many of our members we want to contact, but we do advertising on social media and print and everywhere just to make people aware of these programs. As a small business of the Association of Michigan member, you get my services for free. So there is no cost for me to come to your facility, take a look, and help you find which programs in the utilities work best, as well as other opportunities. So state grants, other federal grants, things like that. So as far as my role, I'm just helping our members find the best opportunity for them.
Thank you. And Suzanne? More pivoting to the question, do you think there should be a definition more, universal around small business?
I really think it just depends on the goals of the organization and what, you want, like, who do you want to target? There's so many different ways to slice the small business definition. The MEDC has launched 23 COVID response programs in the last 10 months, and each program has had a slightly different small business definition or eligibility requirement. Employee number is, one way. Industry. Some of our programs have low to moderate income requirements for the owner and or employees. So it really just depends for us on some of these, the funding source and kind of who we want to target, where the gaps are. So I think those are part of what can really be considered as programs are being developed and you're trying to target a certain segment of business. It's okay, in my opinion, to have different definitions of small business depending on what the goals of, who you're trying to reach. As far as just general awareness, I would say we have had some opportunities recently just to connect more with some of our energy partners, including consumers and DTE, who I've had conversations with a few conversations in the last couple of months. So one of our customers are like DDAs, downtown development authorities, chambers, communities, oftentimes those are folks that have the feet on the street and the knowledge of what businesses are doing and what some of their needs are at a really local level. And so just making sure that some of those point of contacts are aware of the energy efficiency programs offered, I think is a really great place to start in building awareness for the micro businesses especially.
So, and this question now is for everybody. You know, we've talked about the programs that are out there, and Kyle and Suzanne have talked about how they connect folks to programs. But what do you all see, and I'm going to start with you, Jane, as possible barriers for participation in these small business programs? And you can come from any perspective, that you may hear from the customer, that from the utility side. But I'm very interested to hear this because I'm going somewhere with this conversation. So look out. Go ahead.
Sure,
Jane.
no worries. It's a really great question. It's an important question. And, when we were doing intros, I probably should have touched on this a little bit before, but before being where I am now, I worked with the Illinois Commerce Commission. So I had a regulatory side and was really able to see where some of the voices, the stakeholders are, who's involved in some of these thoughts on a policy level. And prior to that, I was also at an implementing contractor working in the Midwest, delivering a lot of the small business programs. So I got to be on the side of what it's like to be a boots on the ground and bring the programs. And now I'm on the utility side and get to see what it's like to manage the programs. Through that, the barriers that I've been able to see are some of the things like Suzanne talked about. The number one thing I would say is lack of awareness, or that distrust that small businesses may have with the programs, like too good to be true. Why would the utility be doing that? So it's, that's one of the barriers. And I would call that maybe the lack of knowledge barrier. The two other big ones are the lack of time and the lack of budget. So many of these small businesses, the micro businesses that Suzanne was talking about, they have 9 employees. They're focused on their main business. Mm-hmm. They need to figure out how to keep the doors open, how to, make the operations work, deal with their employees. They aren't energy experts. They're not thinking about what it means to, when they're running their lights or their heat, how that affects their business. Or if they are, they really don't know how to change it or how to find the time to fix that. So, I think those are the 3 biggest buckets. It's that distrust piece, the time and energy, and then us being able to find a way to connect with the customers and get out there. I think there's nothing more critical than what Suzanne said about getting out into the community, knowing who the community leaders are, helping them understand the program, helping them think about the value that it provides to their constituents, whether it's a chamber of commerce or a house of worship or groups like Kyle's that really get out there and share the word. Having those connections helps build that trust first. And then everything comes after that helping them find the time and the budget to get the projects done. And that's where the programs are critical in being involved. That's my perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. I
Sure.
got some follow-up for everyone. Your thoughts on that, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be kind of tough to follow up Jean. She killed it with her answer. Ours are pretty similar, right? I think the one thing that we see most is the energy expertise. A lot of small business owners don't really understand their usage or where their bill is coming from or how it works. They're busy running the cash register, being the HR person, doing the accounting. At this point in time, they're trying to keep the doors open. So it's a very unique value proposition as the utility who wants you to use energy, because that's how we make money, to come in there and say, hey, participate in our programs where you save energy and we give you incentives to do that. So I think the mistrust part is huge for us. And then I'd say one thing that we've seen in the past couple of years as we've stood up our Trade Ally Network program was a lack of resources. So not only did they not really understand why their bills were what they were, but if they don't have a maintenance person who's on staff who can do some of this stuff, they sure as heck don't have the time to call around to a bunch of electricians and plumbers and all of these people who can install this stuff. So, as I think about where they're struggling and how we can help them, I kind of just lean back to the program design and similar to what Chad mentioned, that's why our programs are the way that they are, right? We come in, we do an audit, it's complimentary. Let's help the business owner understand what they can do to lower their bill. And that helps with that barrier to participation because we're creating a personalized plan for them. We're creating a connection. We're sitting down, we're trying to talk to them. So I'd really say, we're trying to obviously eliminate those barriers or make them as small as possible. And being successful at doing that as we've learned and the programs went on. But once we touch on the COVID side of things, I think we'll peel this back a little bit more to understand. But to add to Gene's answer, I would say for us, it's the energy expertise.
And Suzanne, what would you add?
I don't know if I can add much to these two great answers. I definitely think capacity is just another word to say, like it's very hard to find the time because the business owners are the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. Kind of like Jeremy mentioned, they have a lot of different tasks that they're working on. So this is just one more thing on their plate. And I think communicating the value, which speaks to building trust.
Okay. Chad, anything to add?
No, that similar to everyone else, but a couple things I'll emphasize within that. I talked about earlier is the customers understanding that they are paying for these programs and making sure that they understand that if they participate in these programs, they hopefully can get their money back out of the programs. The education and awareness is there is just, I think there's some misunderstanding. There's a lack of awareness and understanding of EE, as mentioned, not understanding exactly what's out there for them. Our program, sometimes can cover 100% of that project cost. And then on average, we're 70 to 80% of the project costs with a payback in 1 to 2 years. So having that understanding, with different barriers, the resources, the staffing, the time, if they could understand that, just a very little upfront cost, that they can get that benefit back, in a short period of time and then have the long benefits from it. So yeah, nothing to add other than that.
Thanks, Chad. Kyle, I'm sure you have something to add here.
Among those barriers, the additional one I would say is out there is the juice worth the squeeze? We have a lot of members who's, when I say, typically we can save between 20 and 30% on your utility bills. And they say, well, I pay less than $200 a month on utilities. Saving $40 to $60 a month doesn't really appeal to them. And then putting the time, money, and effort into saving 20 or 60 bucks a month doesn't necessarily go to the top of their priority list.
So one of the things that I heard initially from Gene and Jeremy as a barrier was just cost. For some small businesses, it's very cost prohibitive. And we all know that. And so segueing, what are your thoughts on small businesses having a set aside as income qualified has a set aside so that, we're really not looking at cost per kilowatt or per therm. We're really looking at, we need to serve these small businesses. They're paying into this. There's so many statistics about how the small businesses are the crust and the core of our economic engine in this country and across the globe, and how when there's an economic crisis, the small businesses really start the turnaround. So should we provide space for small businesses to be honored by, you don't have to really worry about the cost necessarily, so that we ensure that your energy use is reduced, your carbon footprint is reduced? What are your thoughts there? Anybody can start on that one.
I mentioned earlier that we've had a successful program, so we haven't specifically talked about or looked at a set aside. Some of the ways we have served our customers, enabling us to be successful, even in some really challenging times. I think we can say that we've learned a lot from 2020, and I'm sure the years ahead of us will present new challenges as people settle down from what we've been through. But we were very fortunate to do very well with our program delivery, and some of those things that helped us do that without having a set aside. However, we have had increased incentives. So we have higher incentives for the small business customers specifically, and those are available through our partner trade allies. So we have been working with this network of trade allies and help them develop the skills and understanding of our program, and some commitment of theirs on a participation number and a quality number. They are able to offer these higher incentives to our customers, and these trade allies are more knowledgeable about our program, so their interactions make the whole thing easy for customers. So, if you can help them with that budget piece, there's still that getting into their space and not disrupting their main core business and helping them make these changes. So having trade allies who are knowledgeable and who are easy to help them with the application, making the application itself as simple as possible. We don't want a lot of paperwork or additional hurdles for a customer who, very busy, very focused on their main business, doesn't have time to think about. So without these set asides, and we can talk about that at a different time, or think about that, our increased incentives have certainly helped in engaging with the customers and being a really solid source for them for information and for getting the projects done with ease and without disruption. So I think those are some things that we've leaned on that have helped us get to those goals and provide additional resources.
So one of the things that we found in our work at SEAL, working with small businesses and trade allies, is a lot of trade allies really don't want to work with the very small businesses, particularly the businesses that Suzanne was talking about. If they're 9 or less employees, or the business is too small, the upgrade is not worth their time. Do you experience that with your trade ally and trade allies? And if you do, does the increased rebates and incentives even address that? Because in my mind, a set aside would really address that, because we're going to target these smaller businesses because otherwise they won't participate. So any thoughts on that, Jean?
It's a great question. I can't tell you right now off the top of my head what our participation is for those micro businesses. What I can tell you is through COVID-19 times, the trade allies themselves are small businesses and had struggles of their own as many of their opportunities started to move away or look at different things or not be able to be in a position to participate in projects. So we were able to see the trade allies re-engage in this whole business segment entirely, really go all in and take advantage of the opportunities. We did have some extra bonuses for new customers, and we did have some measures that we increased incentives for even more. So that helped the trade allies have something more to offer to their customers. So again, we leverage this trade ally community, these partners of ours, and really use them to help deliver the programs and really engage with that. And again, I can't speak to the micro businesses at this point. I'm sorry, I don't have the information at my fingertips, but it's a great question. Maybe some of the others want to provide their perspective too.
Chad or Jeremy, your thoughts as it relates to a set aside, and even the set aside against the higher incentives, because I know we've all changed the incentives, to get more participation.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chad.
All right. I think it's an interesting concept. I think, like Jean said, this past more than ever may beg that question. The small businesses have been struggling. There's a lot of government restrictions, the pandemic type of issues that would beg maybe for some additional there. I think what we have done, or what we've tried to do in lieu of a set aside, we've got a lot of different programs. We have a lot of different ways for customers to pay. So at for those small, kind of micro businesses, we offer, install where we'll switch out bulbs, or those low cost measures, or even provide a smart thermostat for certain geographical territories, or simply, we have a marketplace that they can order already discounted product. I think the set aside is probably something that I may not have been totally on board with for 2020. I think it would beg for some additional thought and maybe some additional assistance provide there to gain their participation. Again, I think the thing that I'm interested in is the long-term gain, making customers utility bills less for the long term, even beyond these quick fixes that we can provide.
Jeremy? Thank you, Chad.
Yeah. Honestly, Scott, I think that's a really good idea. I'd love to sit down and look at some of the numbers. Where my mind is going is the cost effectiveness, right? Keeping in mind that we're spending money collected on a surcharge, and it's our job to do that responsibly, right? So sometimes there's a very tough, delicate balance between where you put money and where you take it away. Similar to Chad, being the other utility in Michigan with consumers, I think we kind of have a similar landscape. And for those reasons, that's kind of, I'd lean back on our program design. And so that's the reason why we do the in-person audit, and we do the complimentary light bulbs and thermostats and pipe wrap and kind of things like that. But I'll say this: in the past 2.5 years that I've been managing the program, there certainly is a spotlight on small businesses, and rightfully so. I mean, as you hit on it, these are the lifeblood of our communities, right? These are very important, and a lot of them are struggling right now. So what can we do to help? And as I think to what we're doing in our program, or the kinds of things that we offer customers, I keep thinking back to education, and that piece can't be overlooked, because I think once they can understand the why behind this, to Kyle's point, certainly we have these customers, right, who maybe they run a CPA office and technically they're on a commercial rate, but their bill is basically a residential customer, right? And for those, the ROI is not there. But as an education tactic, why couldn't we talk to them about non-energy benefits, right? And kind of things like that. So I do think, maybe it's not a set aside specifically, but something that we can do for small businesses. I mean, we have a lot of financial partners, right? And this is something that I think we've had a little bit of a struggle with, was getting this information out to small businesses to say, hey, I know this project's expensive, but you qualify for a loan, and oh yeah, it's at 25%, right? Like, nobody's going to take that. So,
Right.
I think we could do a better job of working with our customers, but I think it really starts with education. And once we kind of better understand what those barriers are, we can kind of try to design something around that. But on paper, I love the idea. I think it makes sense. And we know, I mean, even, and this, Scott, with us working together, small business owners need 50 to 75% more incentive to participate in the program. That's just a fact for us. We can't it's very difficult to get customers to participate at a low incentive rate. So I think we kind of have some data that's moving us towards that, but I'd strongly encourage the education piece, and then looking at what we would need to set aside and how that whole mechanism would work.
So I've heard from the utilities. Kyle or Suzanne, what are your thoughts about that? Having a set aside for the small businesses, so that it is minimal to no cost for them.
So I'm not working regularly with energy efficiency, so it's very hard for me to answer this. Pardon me? You're going to change that?
Yes.
I love it. So I think this is a difficult question to answer, because I don't know all sides of what is involved. But I would just echo that, like Jeremy was saying, small businesses are so important to our communities. And one of the things that we're concerned about coming out of the pandemic is what our downtowns are going to look like. Are we going to be seeing empty storefronts? That really contributes to so many things on community vibrancy. And so ways that we can be creative and support small business is something that I think is a really good thing.
Thank you. Kyle?
I think a set aside is a great idea if it's used for the smallest of the small business customers. The micro businesses, the ones that the trade allies don't necessarily want to do because they're not going to make a ton of money on them. But yet again, we still have the education piece. We run into a lot of situations where our members are content with the technology they have simply because it's working. They don't want to change technology and then deal with the issues of it not working, or the old adage of it's not broken, so don't fix it. So I think the education piece would really help on that end as well.
So we have a question that came in, and this is for anybody, but in your mind, is any consideration given to the location of the small businesses, and additionally increased incentives for small businesses in underserved or low income communities? Is any consideration given in those areas?
Scott, that's a great question. And Kelly, thank you for submitting that. Scott, I just think back on our experience working with the small business customers, right? And in our territory, and Detroit's in our service territory, right? And we have a lot of low income customers. We have a lot of houses of worship, people like that really, really need that extra help, right? Right now, we don't have anything specific to an income qualified area. That being said, truth be told, I think it's just a difficult balancing act with a funding mechanism and being able to make sure that we stretch the program out to where it hits the end of the year. I don't think we're at the point of being that sophisticated to really look at markets and set aside monies and budgets based on the actual market size. I think typically the way that we look at our programs, again, is looking at that potential and then moving that money towards the potential, whether that's a technology or an area that we know is more willing to participate in our programs. That being said, Scott, we've done special incentives for churches and kind of things like that. So typically that's the way that we would handle those funding mechanisms, would be to do something like a bonus offering or something like that. And to kind of add to this point, one thing that we're working on at DTE is called the non-wires alternative pilot. And essentially what that means is finding areas that are having reliability issues and targeting those substations with things like DR, energy efficiency, kind of going down that path. So I think we're just now starting to peel back some of these communities that maybe need that extra help. And then what's it going to take to get them to participate? So I think that's a great question. I love the suggestion. I just don't think we're there yet with our level of sophistication on program planning.
And so as a follow-up, another question, which I think follows up here is, saying to assist the business case, has any quantified the total combined energy footprint to be captured? It may not make sense for each small business, and I think this is where you were going, Kyle, but it may make sense to, cluster or have certain segments of business where they are supported. What are thoughts there in terms of a set aside? Is for anybody?
Again, I don't have much to offer on the set aside. I can, share some experiences through different programs that I've worked on, both here at People's Gas and North Shore Gas and my previous experience. We have found, taking a look at a map, you can do some participation, analysis. Where are the customers that you've served? How many customers are available in those spaces? So that has been done in one of the programs that I had worked on previously. And you can then focus on a particular area, and you can look at some demographic information to see if you want to make some inroads there. And we have been part of that before. And you can, again, take some of those tools from our tool belt, which is to go and talk to the chambers in those communities you want to focus in, help them become educated in the program, do some engagement with the small businesses that are there, send them some postcards, help drum up some information or offer them some information on what your program offerings are. Again, helping focus on what we're offering, build that trust, and then send out these trade ally partners who have the ability to service the customers and help increase or offer the higher incentives. So it can be done. I'd be interested in looking at what that might look like in our current market right now. I haven't done that yet for People's Gas and North Shore Gas, but I feel like there's a lot of opportunity that can be done there. Or I think, Scott, what you're getting at too is maybe looking at certain segments like houses of worship. How do you connect with them? What can you offer specifically to them? A few things we're doing to help some of the customers right now are we're putting together kits. And we're looking at different particular markets. We build kits specific to houses of worship and have the right tools in that box so they can start saving energy right away at no cost to them or to other small businesses like that. So there are ways to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Were you done?
Sure. Yep.
I think this conversation is really the crust of how the conversation probably 10 years ago started as it relates to income qualified residents, because they weren't participating in large numbers in EWR and EO programming. And so it was like, what can we do differently? And so I think some of the things that you just mentioned, Gene, let's target kits or let's target communities in low income or income qualified census tracts and things started initially, and then it morphed into these very grand programs and projects that are done for income qualified residents. And I think this is a good starting place. Someone's put a comment in about having education and non-energy wraparound services for small businesses. And I'm sure from Kyle and Suzanne's organizations, you try to bring different things together with the energy waste reduction projects and work that they're able to capture, but making sure that people understand the varying funding sources and opportunities to help their business be sustainable. But I want to switch very quickly because several of you have mentioned COVID and the pandemic. And one of the things that has happened is from the pandemic is there different regulations now that businesses have to adhere to because of air circulation and different things that are directly connected to energy waste reduction and energy optimization. What changes have you seen from a need standpoint and from a service standpoint? What are you doing differently to respond to making sure, to Suzanne's point, that we don't see empty downtowns? Because we are starting to see some closed businesses, which I think was to be expected. But what changes have you seen, and what are you doing differently?
The changes we've seen are kind of the extremes on both ends. It's those who are going to do a project have done a project in 2020 as they would have normally. And then the other side of it is when they shut down, their income source shut down, so they canceled their projects. So
Yes.
we saw those two extremes. Those who had the capital and already decided to do it just kept their foot on the gas and just kept moving forward. And then those who had their income stop completely just shut down their project. And then again, a lot of things are being done from home. So when you talk to somebody that works there, they're not necessarily in the building. And so trying to coordinate doing an energy audit or doing an install is a little bit difficult since the people who normally sit next to each other are, at home.
And because people are at home, Kyle, I'm sorry, I keep doing that. Are people prioritization around having an energy audit in a building because people aren't there in terms of, for certain businesses, retail businesses still see folks coming in, but other businesses, has the priority changed? Has the conversation changed?
Absolutely. So again, two things. We've had people who own their buildings put their buildings on the market because they don't see their business ever needing to have a brick and mortar anymore.
Right.
And then the second one is those not renewing their leases.
Mhm.
So we do have a lot of our members who rent space. And again, back to the previous question, when you cluster businesses together, I think of like a strip mall or an office suite where there's several businesses in there. You'd have to get everybody to agree to it, and then second, getting the business or the building owner to agree to it, because there's that split incentive. They own the building, but they don't pay the utility bills. So why would they invest money into something they're not even paying for? And then on the other side, why would you invest money into something that you don't own? So I just put a whole bunch of information out there, but that's kind of the extremes that we've seen. We've seen people decide to move forward or completely shut down. So
Okay.
that's made it a little bit more difficult.
And Chad, representing the utilities, have you all from consumers done anything differently to respond to the small business segment specifically around the pandemic?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Scott. Yeah, so immediately once the pandemic hit last March, we had staff that were out, we call it cold knocks. So they were stopping at different businesses, offering those free services, whether mint or direct install. And when we had to pull those staff out of the field, we immediately created a virtual offering. So that virtual offering really is a phone call where we contacted the customers. We did an outline campaign where we contacted customers, offered that service, and then had that conversation about their building. May not be in their building at this time, but they could still talk about their building and think about maybe these. The other opportunity that it did open up is that the people are not in working at their desks, and there is the ability to go in and do upgrades during this time and not bother during that time. And secondly, really as we all have, we've increased our safety protocols, making sure that we're being as safe as possible, even now that we're back in the field and we still are on those doors. Yes, some customers are not open to it, and then other customers are. We make it as a light touch as possible, not interfering with and putting anybody at risk. Secondly, we looked at all of our rebates. We talked earlier a little bit about the upgrades that the filter changes, maybe furnace HVAC type of upgrades that could help be more preventive. And we built a piece that really highlighted those. So if you are looking upgrading your HVAC system for safety protocol, we do have some rebates available for that, for and different things. So yeah, we did switch gears a little bit. We're thankful for business that do continue to pay. I think there's an opportunity, as we're out of the office right now, that time to get in there and do those upgrades and be ready for what we all quote unquote normal and maybe back in the office.
So one of the questions that was asked, and this is to any of the utilities, aside from houses of worship, do any of your utilities offer specific programming for nonprofit businesses?
Scott,
We include, I was just going to say, we do include nonprofit within our small business program. So it's
But is there
altogether.
anything special for nonprofit businesses, or they're just included?
They're included. And for ours, they're included.
Thanks.
And
I
for
would say the
Jeremy?
same for DTE, Scott. One thing that I've seen, just kind of going back to the attention, and deservedly so, on small businesses, what we've been doing at DT is standing up vertical market specific programs. So I could see this being something to look at for the future. For example, we're piloting a grocery program specific to only grocery stores and convenience stores. We have a steam traps program. We have a compressed air program. So we're starting to find out who these customers are that need this special attention and where the opportunity and potential is, and kind of start to create some programs around them. As you know, in the past, Scott, we've done a lot of work with houses of worship, and for the most part, there's not really any bonuses or incentives extra that we can provide, but typically what we'll do is push them towards financing and buy the interest rate down, or kind of try to do something like that to help them out a little bit more. So we've seen some success with that. But I really see the future being a specific vertical market driven program for houses of worship or for nonprofits, just considering the different facilities that they may have, or unique constraints.
And I'll just jump in real quick. Similar, our program is designed to be kind of a one size. We talked about segmentation earlier. We do have a house of worship type of program as well. And we've done different nonprofits, maybe not part of our general program, but depending on the year and the funding available, we have done some specific outreach to nonprofits with maybe 100% cost covering for those. So yeah, we definitely look at that. I think for us, our next step in what we're working on this year is really looking at that segmentation, and I think maybe answer some of these questions about offering different incentives per segment, or those hard served areas, and to see what we can do to increase participation.
Thank you.
And I wanted to jump back, if it's okay to jump back to the COVID question, to one of the things we've really been thinking about during this time period is, how do we meet the customers where they are right now? And safety is of importance to everybody more than ever now. So it is looking at how to pivot a little bit. And so we've had to do that quickly. But similar to what Chad talked about, we have had outbound calling to engage with customers and offer them services over the phone. But we also have built an online assessment tool. So small businesses have this opportunity to go online, answer some questions about what their business looks like and how it operates and what their things that are going on within their space. And then they'll get a customized report sent to them. And so it's really helping them be in their space and still receive these programs. And we talked about kits before and delivering them to them so that they can start saving energy without having people in their space. And then pivoting a little bit and taking a look at who the customers are that are there. And we're really sorry to see the effect that are happening on dry cleaners, for example. But new markets are opening up too. Cloud kitchens have been something that are new and growing in this time and space. And because we have some flexibility in our program, we're able to look at how to help cloud kitchens and work with them and provide information. So again, I'll just go with meeting the customer where they are now is critical. It's offering them online safe ways to start and engage in our programs, offering them increased education through webinars. And the same goes for our trade allies, as well. So building up that information, sharing that, using technology where we can, and again, just trying to really be where the customer is right now and be able to pivot and help those in the market that we're in currently.
I'm glad that you brought that up. Gene, because someone commented that you all specifically, Peoples and North Shore Gas, pivoted very nicely to do webinars specifically around energy solutions focused on restaurants and takeout and delivery. So I'm going to encourage people to go to Peoples Gas and North Shore Gas to look at what products and services, webinars that you may have done, because I'm sure they can find them on your website, or find to pull them for resources to see what you will have offered. DTE has also done some webinars as well in partnership with us for small business. I did have one more question that was already answered that Andrew McNally asked, and I just want to let you know, Andrew, around the common definition of small business, there really isn't one. Each of the organizations did have their own specific guidelines, and you can find them within each of the organizations. I will say that Kyle and Suzanne's really are more based on the funding that comes through, but more federal definitions. So you can look those up, and if you need those, please reach out and we can get you the links to those. I do want to thank everybody because it is 1 o'clock. Amazingly, that was an hour already. And we will definitely share our white paper on this and some takeaways. I do want to just let everybody know that on Thursday, April 22nd, I believe it is, at the same time, we will have our second webinar on small business in our small business series, and we will be talking about virtual assessments, I believe. And is that really the next wave? And so we are going to be having these conversations through the year, and we are greatly appreciative to Gene, to Chad, Jeremy, Suzanne, and Kyle for taking the time out of your busy schedules to talk with us today. If anybody else has further questions, please send them out. People are saying, great job, thank you, time well spent. So thank you so much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. It was great to be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See ya.